So it's my understanding at this point that we're going to put on hold the search for a new audit company just for now. Not that I have the list from the Secretary of State's professional, whatever they are, office. So at the time, once we get into the fall, we can sort of start working our way through that. We have to, I think Carter was going to look at, and maybe Susie, look at what other communities that are about our size, who they use for audit firms. I've been given a couple, most specifically A.M. Peisch out of Littleton, but there may be others. And the RFP document is incredibly, I haven't read the whole thing, but oh my gosh. So we really need to kind of look at that, or I think Travis had talked about maybe looking through it as well. But I think Chip, you made the statement that it would be beneficial for us, or it would not without our educational, to take a look at that document and see what we're looking for.
RFP to get a new audit.
Yeah. Just a request for proposal to go out. So
for the audit firms, have they addressed at all, like what we were talking about, the inappropriate accounting for the $200,000? Was that something they should have caught?
So I'm no expert, and I think Chip is probably going to bite his tongue a little bit on this one.
Yes.
I will say that I am disappointed with the number of anomalies that Chip has discovered, because it seems like certainly if you take them as a whole, something should have set off some bigger warning flags than we received. Having said that, there were some warning flags that also were ignored in those audit reports. And on the question of the $220,000 budgeting thing, I don't know if it was in their stated contract that they were looking at the correlation between what was budgeted and what was spent. But what we certainly should have been cognizant of was the fact that we were consistently overspending year after year, and by hundreds of thousands of dollars, and somebody should have been able to figure that out. So what I said to Jim yesterday, mid-afternoon, was that I asked him to reach out, make it clear that we intended to work with them for this audit, and ask for a meeting for Jim and myself, and potentially any of you who would like to join us, to clarify exactly what it is we're looking for this time.
well, and Susie and I were talking about this. It would be helpful, from what I've learned in the last 3 weeks about auditing things like this, if we could find any documentation at all, anywhere, that the city might have in records that we would have worked with them to have signed from the past.
You mean about the contracts?
The contract, because it really depends on what we want them to do and what their standard is. And so we don't even know what the contract looks like.
Would it be most expeditious just to request from them a copy of the agreement and findings over the past couple of years? Might be the most expeditious way, because I don't know if Jim and the rest of the team, Robin and Stacy, thank you. I'm going to get there. Have it at their beck and call. They might have the contract, but they might not have the findings, because that seems to be something that would have gone to the mayor or the city manager, and that might just be lost in the ether.
I think that it's perfectly reasonable to ask them.
I think that's...
Other municipalities do they audit in the state of Ohio?
I don't know the contract with them, so that would be a conversation for...
Put that as a takeaway and ask of them.
Yeah.
So the term you're looking for is called a letter of engagement. Typically that letter is drafted by the audit firm and requested by whoever is appropriate to sign as a representation of the city of the engagement for the audit. So most common, the auditor provides the document of what the city is requesting.
So, okay, so basically it boils, it's like a ISO 9000 type thing where if you say you're going to build a garbage vehicle and you build a garbage vehicle, you pass the audit. So if they say we're just going to make sure that 1 and 1 equal 2, and they found that 1 and 1 equal 2, pass the audit. Or they've fulfilled their letter of engagement correctly. So, okay. No need to throw rocks. We'll just see what there is, and if there's anything worth digging into, we can dig into it. What else was, because we've got the cash flow statement.
I think the idea is now that we've given that cash flow statement certificate to Pasumsic, that we look more into that spreadsheet to start working specifically monthly or however we can, however the mayor wants us to, with the clerk's office and clerk treasurer's office to help update the tabs, the monthly tabs, so we can keep a better rolling. That's one of the stipulations of some of this, is that we be able to give the bank a quarterly update. So we have to.
Yeah, Chip, can we ask you there, like, given where we are now and all we've done in the last 3 months with your help, what do you think your next tasks are going to be as soon as we get through this next week of arranging the loan?
So we still have the audit preparation, which I've already talked with Robin and Stacy about, and asked if they had a list of reports that they would normally run on June 30, fiscal year end, and store in preparation for the audit. And I did get one-liners, if you will, back. We run this, we run this, we run this. Then I replied with other things that they should run, and that none of these should be printed except to PDF, so that when the auditor asks for them, you email them. You don't scan them and send them, you already have them.
Got it.
Yep.
And then I further reiterated and said, everything you're doing at fiscal year end should be done at the end of every month. That you're reconciling the bank statement, the receivables, the payables, all the time, every month. So June 30 simply becomes another month. I have, through Jim, suggested journal entries to be made to bring all of the AR-18, Newton, and tax administration receivables in line with what the subsidiary says. And typically every couple days, I go back in to the balance sheets to see if they still tie out to the subsidiaries. And they have been. But I'm not convinced that that test was ever done by the auditors. Then we still have, as I reported in the last meeting, we have a little over 300,000 sitting in the cash account for subject checking. And we have over 550,000 in accounts payable unpaid to end the year. So part of that may be addressed on Monday. If Rick is able to get the JPC card funds moved from the line of credit into the checkbook, then I believe we'll have enough to cut checks on the 30th and bring our account balance down to under the 50,000 that I thought we would be at the first day I ever started.
I heard the underlying point there and love it.
Okay.
What's the JPC?
It's JP Sicard, S-I-C-A-R-D. It's the company that's working with us.
Contractor.
It's a contracting company on the water tower. And we have a bill from them that we have to pay. And the last round, if I'm reading the letter from Ellen Stanley correctly, there was a problem the last time we had to pay a bill because we hadn't paid made an appropriate payment out of the grant income to lower that LOC as per the agreement. So when it came time to make a major payment to Sicard, we didn't, we were not allowed to do that until we had paid the bill. So it was actually a 24-hour day where I approved the check. We drove down to Barton and handed the check over. We asked them to cash it immediately, and the next day we took the proof of payment to the bank and got the reimbursement to cover from the line of credit. This time around, if I'm reading Ellen's letter correctly, that should not be necessary because we're in good standing with the bank. So if I'm correct about that, on Monday, we'll be able to simply transfer that next payment of roughly $300 and some odd thousand, 309 or something, was it, Chip?
Yeah, 209.
200, so sorry. We'll transfer that out of the line of credit into our own account and make the payment to Sicard out of that.
Chip, I love you to death, man. You're awesome. But I also think we need to discuss how much we're paying Chip, and should we be hiring someone internally to help to transition this too?
Well, so here's where we are on that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut the pace, but I wanted to just put that on the agenda at some point.
So we wrote a job description for a job that someone would train into, where they would learn from Chip how to do the ongoing task of creating monthly reports, putting them in front of council, supporting the city manager when we have one, kind of all the financial pieces that would be a normal part of operations in cooperation with both the other department heads and the treasurer's office. As of a week ago, we didn't have any candidates for that position. It was a combination with that and the office management position. This week, I think I may have a lead on somebody who I think could be a possibility for that. So I'm still hopeful. And once we have that person would come into these conversations and would, over time, pick up some of what the ongoing maintenance would be. But I have no expectation that we would say goodbye to Chip anytime soon, because there's so much work to be done to try and clean up everything. And we didn't talk about it this afternoon with the council, but another condition of the loan from the bank is that we continue to maintain the contractual relationship with NEMRIC until we think and the bank agrees we can manage it on our own.
That's why it's kind of funny that came up there, because that's kind of why I was asking the question.
Is that position a contractor or is it a city employee?
The position that we're talking about hiring for, that'd be an employee.
So benefits, pension,
Yes,
all of
that
the
would be in it.
things.
It's been one that we've been talking about for months, and we thought, my intention was to hire for it. Actually, when I was elected, I told everybody I thought we'd have the person in place by May 1st. Here we are, but we're working.
Little did he know.
Yeah. I mean, it took me till the end of May just to get everything clear in the weeds to be able to advertise the position.
Well, and initially, if I can just say that exactly the same thing I said at City Council last week, was that the original job description was everything from soup to nuts in the kitchen sink. And it's hard, it really is hard to think that someone who has a high enough level of even just general accounting that will understand this stuff is going to want to sit in there and answer the phone every day and do and I'm not saying it's menial, because I've done everything from nothing but answering the phones, to everything else. But I'm saying these are two different classes of people, if I, for lack of a better.
We had that person in Becky Therian, and I suspect we would have it again if we wait it out. But we'll see. This person may or may not pan out, and if they don't, the council's given approval to separate the two job descriptions and go after the office manager first.
And that's all in the approved budget, and that's factored in all of our numbers.
Yep.
Chip, are you still doing a line by line on the budget? You were doing that review.
I have done balance sheet activities primarily. I have not done a deep dive into budgets at all. And when we get to after June 30th, that question has got to come up, because we can still go back and make adjustments to FY25. But I know that Lori actually had sent an email maybe last week with 6 specific general fund expenditure accounts that she wanted to review the detailed transactions on. I think it makes sense. I could, print that out in PDF and send it to her alone, but I think ideally the conversation really is the whole group should be looking at those accounts. I'm in a position now where I could generate them and share a screen, but I think these are the types of things you'd like to get an email and be able to make your own notes on, and then come into a meeting and say, specifically, on this date, on this account, this activity, what do we got to back that up with?
The other thing, kind of going down this vein, is so it's June, dear God, 27th. The new cash flow that we've put together really starts happening here in the next couple of days. Are Jim and Becky and Stacy ready to keep it updated and do the monthlies and be ready for it?
I don't know that it's done, probably. I don't think so.
I mean,
It depends on what you're asking. Can you be more specific?
I'm just trying to, so we've got a cash flow statement that's a projection. So now we have to have actuals
Yes,
against that. Are they ready to do actuals? Or have we planned for that to say, okay, because that sounds like what the bank
Assumption.
is, I butcher it every time, is because the bank's going to want actuals. Are they
Yes.
ready to produce the actuals against the forecast?
so let's talk about the forecast. As of June 30th, our anticipation was to be $870,000 in the hole. And I just told you we have about 306 in the bank and 560 in payables. That is far different than 870,000 in the hole. So already our starting point is better than what we thought we were going to be at. So then if everything comes to fruition, in which the bank does approve our line of credit, and then next week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we draw on that line of credit because we need cash on July 7th to make payroll and accounts payable. And we already have $500,000 owed out in accounts payables that at this stage won't be paid unless we can draw on the water tower line of credit on Monday and cut all the checks on Monday. These are warrants that have already been signed by council, but just not paid. So what is our stand on our forecast? It's already blown apart because we're not at 870,000 in the red.
But that's fine. That's what I'm saying. That's actuals. I'm
Right.
fine with it being blown up. I mean, as long as we can show the actuals, that's
Yep.
the whole point of a forecast. Is your best educated guess. Now we deal actuals, which cool. So,
And they do want the balance sheets on the day that they issue the note.
I
The
think,
bank wants the current balance sheet on the day they issue the notes.
so I
So
think,
that balance sheet may or may not have what it has on it today if we cut checks on Monday, the last day of the year.
yeah.
That may say we have 45,000 in cash, but we have no accounts payable. Further showing we need cash.
Yeah.
so I think one of the things that Hal is talking about is we have been working with that spreadsheet that Hal had started and Colin had worked on a little bit too. And then we just haven't extended out like how we're going to keep track of the line items, and if we're going to get really super specific, or if we're just going to do, the full, public works and, and then you take the tab for July and you put the actuals. So like, the 5th or 10th of August, you have actuals that can go into that spreadsheet that keep a running total, through the year. Like, what did we actually do in July? What did we actually do in August, and plug them into the spreadsheet?
Because we're gonna have to be really mindful of every penny, because I'd really like to see us be able to, I want to stretch a penny to copper wire. I just want to really work it hard and ask a lot of questions. Everything from the vehicle.
Do we need a new cop car?
Yeah, do we need a new cop car? Can we hold off on, unless there is a need to draw on the Walmart fund, does it make sense to borrow on the line of credit to fill that hole just now? I want to make sure we're asking every single time we're doing that. Because if we don't ask, we got to ask the questions every month so that before someone does something or something happens, there's the mindset of, is it I'm going to get asked about this, or there's new questions.
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I also think that a lot of what we're dealing with right now is because people were writing checks for the last few years, like on a spending spree with zero, either they just we didn't understand what the financial situation was, and I would love to be able to commit to the public that going forward, we're not going to just, it's not a blank check when a request comes in for a reimbursement or to pay a check. Like, I think it's within reason to have very specific guidelines in place around what, maybe even to the point of, a freeze on spending till we figure out what is happening. Like how, this is all good, but we're basically we're borrowing kind of rebalancing our credit cards, and we're still robbing Peter to pay Paul, and at some point we have to dig out of this. So I think just being mindful around the cash flow and all that is great, but let's find out where is every penny.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That if we have if we're holding ourselves accountable to actuals and everything, I'm sorry, I have no idea.
Jennifer Carroll.
Got it.
This is just my opinion, but there's a secondary issue that's ongoing here. It's not just we got to be looking at every expense, but it also has to be, we have to be looking at where the city has that expense lodged. So back in the time that Laura Dolgan was in office, I did, as best I could with the information I had available to me, a pretty significant analysis of the water and sewer funds from a standpoint of expenses and revenues. And what I saw when I put it out over time was this trend where when the water meters, the new rates went in back, I want to say it was around 2018, there was more revenue coming in at that point than there were expenses. That then, over the course of about 2 years, disappeared. And the revenue remained pretty constant during those years. What changed dramatically were the expenses. And so I came forward and said that I believed that expenses were being migrated from the general operating fund into the water and sewer funds in order to absorb this surplus that they were experiencing as a result of the new rates being put into place. I've asked multiple times for close analysis of that. I've been told right along that's either being done, has been done, whatever. There's been no evidence that it has ever been done. I strongly suspect that there are many expenses located in water and sewer that don't rightfully belong there. It's my opinion that this migration took place because the water and sewer budgets never go before the taxpayers for approval. the council sitting at the table in their capacity as water commissioners are the only ones that vote on the water and sewer budgets. And for many years, they didn't even do that. And so it was kind of a given that whatever numbers were put forward, we're just going to get, you know, passed over to the taxpayers in the water and sewer fees. Meanwhile, back in the general fund, you suddenly had openings, right? Because these expenses had been migrated. And so certain projects and everything could still go underway, and yet the annual increase to the general fund budget would only be 3% or so, which was kind of a standard, you know, acceptance in the general public. It's going to be a brutal experience, if my suspicions are correct, to move those expenses back to the general fund, okay? It's going to be brutal. And I'm not sure if it's even doable. But I do think that a close analysis needs to be, you know, undertaken in regard to what exactly is in the water and sewer funds for expenses, and whether or not they are legitimately tied to those funds, because by state statute, they must be. And so repairs and maintenance on trucks and stuff, it blew up. It went from, you know, these numbers are not rooted in fact, but just to give you an example of like the magnitude, they went from like 30,000 to like, you know, 287,000 or so. I mean, it was huge, huge jumps over these few years. So
can I jump in there? So I'm going to focus on the process and what's most helpful from this team. We have already, Chip, please correct me if you think I'm wrong about this, but the whole point that I've been learning from Chip is that the summary version of the balance sheet gives us the tool that you're asking for already.
Okay.
Chip can help us learn how we print that document, produce that document twice a month in advance of every council meeting. And once a month, we can compare what our balance sheet says to what we said we would do in our cash flow document. Am I right about that, Chip?
In a very general way, yes.
Yes. So I'm not interested right now in spinning our wheels trying to turn out the cash flow document that I thought a year ago was the logical tool we needed. Because right now it feels like it's actually a distraction from more important work. So from my perspective, what we're doing with Chip is we're learning how to read those balance sheets and watch for warning signs. And I think it should absolutely be a role of this task force going forward that at least once a month, you see those balance sheets, you talk about it with Chip, and you make a series of observations about what you see for the council to digest. Because it's no matter what we do to educate the council, they got a lot of other things on their minds too. So I think that should be a task. Two, I think there is work that you all could be doing right now, as Lori has suggested, to take the balance sheet summaries that we got and say, well, wait a minute, what's going on in this one? You know, why is that number so far from what we thought it should be if we just looked at it logically? And then trying to go deep and get transaction detail underneath it and find out exactly what happened with that. And, you know, if we had a forensic, you know, accountant on our staff who was expert at this stuff, we just say, go find the answer to these questions. We don't, you're it, right? With support from Chip, I do think you all should be saying, hey, Chip, how do I get this piece of information? And he can help us do that. So I think that's a legitimate piece. And then the third one is, I think I've got four here. The third area is, it's clearer and clearer to me after talking with some members in the community that we should at least ask the question about whether the budget numbers we used to create this year's budget from last year's budget were correct in the first place. And the only way to do that I'm aware of would be to go back and look at the, you know, what was the budget that was passed, the actual, what are the numbers for that, and then given the worksheet that we started with to do this year's budget, are they the same, or did they somehow get changed in the process? Because as a person who got deeply involved in the budget at the last minute this year in January, I made the assumption that I was looking at numbers from the previous year that were correct and legitimate, and I tried to say, okay, well, is this going to be the same, go up or go down, right? And if it's going to go up, by about how much? And we just went through with the department heads, and I worked with them on every line, but I started with information that may have been faulty. So I think it would be great if this group could do a little bit of a forensic dive into that question. And then we get to the question that I think I hear Jennifer raising right now, which is what expenses have we budgeted for are appropriate? Are any of them supposed to be allocated to operating budget from water and sewer, or vice versa, right? Like, how do we sort that out? And making sure that as we do our budgeting this year, well, two things, right? One, making sure that our spending this year is forecasted appropriately. And if we have to adjust the budget we've already approved for 25-26, so be it, right? Because the holy grail in this is going to be, we want to finish this year with no net loss. That's the goal here. No matter what else happens, we finish with no net loss. So we've got to look at both this year's budget, and we've got to try and figure out right now what the process will be to work on next year's budget for 26-27, so that we don't find ourselves in this position again next year. So that's at least 4 different tasks that I think this group could be taking on.
I want to, hold on just a second, Jennifer, because I want to say this about the water and sewer. I think they, especially Paul, but I think they will also be starting to look at exactly kind of what you were talking about, because he has said there are things just in his looking at the water and sewer that he knows from his years at Champlain Valley that it's just not done correctly. There are things that were charged that shouldn't have been. And there are other ways to do it, which make it a little harder for our small group downstairs to manage those funds, paying back instead of, you can do a lot of shifting on paper, but so he's already seeing some of those things. And I think that's the point of going forward, probably sooner rather than later, but not tomorrow.
There was also a deficit of 185,000
Yes.
from 2019 to the present day,
Yeah.
which somehow got ignored.
Yeah.
There was no attempt to figure out a way of acquiring that money.
Well, and we know from Wednesday night's meeting and the information that Jennifer Hopkins gave, that the fact is that the increased rates that will actually be due in September are not enough already. So, so it's just gonna, and if they have to increase them every quarter, they'll have to increase them every quarter. But I just wanted to answer the same, question. Go ahead.
Am I allowed to speak?
Please.
Okay. So, just to give a concrete example, some of the heavy equipment that's apportioned to water and sewer, they literally just pulled numbers out of their rear end, for lack of a better term. And when I asked at one point, are you keeping track of the clock hours on this heavy equipment? I mean, they all have time clocks in them, right? And the answer was no, and it was offered in a way that I was being completely unreasonable in that request, which I don't happen to think that I was being unreasonable, and I don't think I should have suffered the mockery that was made of the request. Just the procedural aspects of these apportionments, that really is a lot of the problem, because there are ways that one can say, okay, this employee works in water and sewer this amount and works in the public works this amount based on their timesheets, and they can be properly apportioned. And all of that data is just being ignored, and they're just pulling percentages out of thin air and putting them down. And it's a real flippant issue. the procedures need to be like looked at as well. And this may be more of a comment to be made for Paul, right? But the procedures and practices of how these expenses are apportioned between general fund and water and sewer need to be examined as much as the numbers themselves.
I just think that this is a major sea change, as it were, across the board in the city. I'm in agreement with you that, or whoever said, you know, the fact is, maybe they don't go to pick and shovel every other day and buy something. Maybe they have to get pre-approval. I know my office, I mean, I can buy what I want to because I work from home and I don't put it on an expense report. But the people in my office in South Carolina, you know, they have to go to the boss to find out if they can get something, or he has to find, you know, it's not just willy-nilly running down to the store and purchasing something. I'm not saying that we have to be that strict, but maybe for a little while we have to say there for some.
I am willing to consider such things, but not until I have a whole hell of a lot more information from this group of people.
Absolutely.
I am not prepared to incite general panic among our staff or the community by declaring a budget freeze that I can't substantiate.
Right.
So if you want to make a case for this, go to work.
Make case.
So we can look at
So,
something.
can I offer some insight?
Please.
This I think was brought up in another meeting, can't remember whether it was council or here in the task force, that what's lacking is documented policies and procedures, and what you're trying to get a grasp of how things work now is in part because you don't have policies and procedures. There may be general assumptions, because government happens to work that way, that a department head has authority to spend up to X number of dollars, and over and above that must go to the mayor or the council. There may be a practice of which when you need something, when you're sitting on the side of the road, and the shovel broke, you go to pick and shovel and get one. You don't go through an approval process to spend $19. So part of the drill down that you're looking to do, I think first is to try to understand either the verbal, oral process that people go through now, and that it's not documented, so that you have a feel for how things work before stepping in and accusing somebody of not being in control.
That's right.
Because they feel they are in control and they're doing the best they can. But you're not going to get an auditor that says, hey, you didn't fill out a purchase order to go buy a fire extinguisher for the kitchen. Because you don't do that there. But what you ought to have is the approval process, which I think I've heard only recently. Invoices. They come in the mail. Who opens them? Who approves them? Who assigns the expense accounts to them? And if it's the same person that opens them, that assigns the expense account to them, that cuts the checks and signs the checks. Well, then how does the department head know what his expenses are? He didn't see them before they were paid. There are many bills that are plain vanilla. The electric bill for the power at the wastewater treatment plant. It is what it is. It goes to that line. I don't need a department head to tell me how to pay that. But if you've got the telephone system in town hall, and you're splitting that 3 ways from Sunday for every single phone line by analyzing phone calls in and phone calls out, I will tell you you're wasting your time, because town hall doesn't distribute the telephone, I don't think, across water and sewer funds. It's a cost of being in business. So that desire to know more starts with learning, as I said 3 months ago. I gotta figure out what you guys do and what you have. Then I can make recommendations. So looking at reports and analyzing lines will tell you what happened, but understanding how each of the employees interact with the financial statement requires somebody sitting with them and politely asking for an explanation of how do things work. It's not accusatory, you're just trying to collect information so that then you can make a recommendation that says, well, maybe for certain departments we need a stricter set of rules. But the last thing you want to tell the mechanic in the highway garage in a snowstorm on Saturday afternoon is he can't go buy a drive shaft.
That's right.
Because then the public complains the streets aren't plowed. So I have no authority to spend $1,500. You know, sorry. So it does make a difference. Each department, what level of authority someone may have, and how urgent the need is. And with all the places I've been, typically, in your case, it's the cell phone of the mayor that is informed of a condition and gives consent orally, so that when somebody asks, the mayor knows what the hell is going on. Why do I have 3 guys standing down looking over a manhole? Well, there's a 4th guy down in it, we gotta get out. You know, the public doesn't see the 4th guy that's down in that manhole that's stuck. So that's the word of caution of presumption of information. It's better to learn how things work so you can fix them than to fix things you don't know how they work.
That's exactly, thank you. That says it quite eloquently,
Yes.
and it speaks my mind. So I think I've got a pretty good summary of the various tasks. And, you know, I think what I need from you all is to be proactive about deciding which pieces you actually are prepared to take on and how you want to do it. And, you know, Chip's job is to tell us if he thinks we're headed the wrong direction, and if he thinks we're headed the right direction, to provide good information for us when we need it so that we can do a deeper dive. And I will say that Water and Sewer is asking these questions, and you know, Paul Tice is by far and away the most qualified person in the city, as far as I'm concerned, to help us with the questions that Jennifer's raising, and some of us have too, about what's in that water and sewer budget that should or shouldn't be. So they're gonna work on the water and sewer side for sure. But we have a lot of questions to ask on the operations side that I think rightfully belong in this group. So my list, I'll just review them, are reviewing the balance sheets at least once a month in advance of the council seeing them, and then raising any red flags that you think the council ought to be paying attention to, so that we're not just going to the council and saying, here are your balance sheets, what do you think? Right? And give them some guidance.
So I would add to that balance sheet and then budget status reports.
Yes, thank you.
Both in combination. One says what our best plans were by budget and what our actuals are. And then the balance sheet is what you have, what you owe, and what you're worth.
Love it. Yep.
And that's what we went over with the council last meeting, I think. Not the one we had today, but the one before that. And there's 2 methods of running the budget status report. And I gave the council what is called suppressed to headers, meaning not every detail line underneath totals shows up. It's the big picture of the category of Gardner Park. What's the total budget for Gardner Park? Where are we with Gardner Park actions? There are a series of 30 lines under there. I don't want to bog the council down with those lines. I want this committee to look at those lines and say, hey, this one stands out. What's going on there? so that by the time it gets to council, when they see the aggregate numbers, the committee has a response to why something looks out of place in the aggregate numbers.
Loving that. Any questions about that one? Okay, then the next thing I see is the task of trying to compare last year's budget as it opened, you know, the budget that was approved effectively 2 years ago, to the budget numbers we used to start from in preparing for this year's budget. And just look at whether there are discrepancies between the budget that was approved in March of 23 and the budget that we were using in January of 20. Do I have that right? March of 22, I could be wrong. Anyway, the point is that the number, I'm not entirely confident that the numbers the department heads and I were looking at in January that were the budget that we were currently of the current year, that would have been March of 23, were the same as the numbers that I was starting with as we created the budget for this coming year. So I'd love us to do a deeper dive into that.
So there's a question here. One of the things that the auditors were using, and it sounds like you continue to want to use, are spreadsheets. And spreadsheets are not the financials. So the financial reports have budgets on them for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What I would love to have is the next year budget already plugged into the system. So when we close the books, the numbers are there. I have found more often than not, the spreadsheet does not total to what the computer does when we plug them in line by line.
So, okay, Chip, I love that because I had that question as we were working on the budget. Our spreadsheet that we work from was created many years ago, and Becky Therian has just done what looks to me to be a heroic, though maybe occasionally misguided effort to keep making that spreadsheet work year after year after year. And, you know, I think John Ward created this sucker more than 10 years ago now.
Yes.
So my question for you, Chip, is how do we break that cycle? Like, you know, I keep wishing that we could break the cycle by having a new general ledger that is more streamlined and more easy and easier to read. But maybe we just can't do that right away. Are you recommending that we take the budget we just passed and make sure that it's all correct in NEMRIC, all of the line items are correct in NEMRIC, and then we use only that going forward? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yes.
And do you think
If
that's
it's not in the financial system, that it is not reportable.
it doesn't count? So effectively, we're going to give up the John Ward spreadsheet in this process.
You may not give that
It's on the
up,
chair.
but it has to constantly be validated by the information in the financial.
Okay, it's got to be reconciled effectively
Yes,
to the financials because they're the gospel.
So
they
Chipper,
are what should be audited and not the spreadsheets.
Right.
so are you saying that these proposed items in this budget
Yes,
are not in NEMRIC?
that's what he's saying. The items are all listed,
The items are there, but these numbers.
but the numbers, when I know this part because I'm the one who took this over to Memphremagog Press to get it printed this year. Those numbers came out of a spreadsheet that we've been operating with for many years.
Yes.
That does all the calculations for us as we go. And Chip's saying, okay, fine, keep the spreadsheet, but reconcile to make sure your spreadsheet matches the actual balance sheet out of NEMRIC.
So the formulas may not be working or accurate.
I think the formulas probably are working. I think what's happened is that over time, there's been slippage between the actual books and the spreadsheet.
Hey, Chip, does NEMRIC, and this is ignorance of NEMRIC, does NEMRIC accept like a budgetary number? So, you know, we've budgeted, you know, $100,000 for toilet paper for the next year. And then we're expensing every month, you know, $80,000, $8,000 towards that. Does NEMRIC have that capability?
Yes,
Okay, sorry, you said, like I said, this is a question of ignorance.
yes.
Okay, so we should
So
have,
during budget preparation, we have what's actually built into the software, a comparative budget report, so that out of the financials, you can plug in next year's budget. You can actually plug in 2 years from now budget and start to run reports and say, well, here's what it looked like in 24, 24's actual 25 budget, 25 year to date, 26 budget, and 27 budget. Well, hell, we can't do 27, we have a load of 26, and we're not done with 25. So there's capacities in there that just have never been utilized. And one of the first tasks that I took to the city council was to take a spreadsheet of committed fund balances that were identified in the audit as committed fund balances that were never stated on the balance sheets in NEMRIC. So I know there never was a reconciliation with the audit with the financials. That spreadsheets had been the rule, and everybody's been living by and auditing those spreadsheets and using NEMRIC as a glorified check writing system.
That's exactly the way it is.
Wow, that,
okay, so,
For how long?
A long time.
Well, and
Long enough to
well,
take
about a
off.
month ago. And then today, council relieved what I hope to be the final reserves in water and sewer that I just moments ago emailed Jim the journal entry to make to clear those reserves because we don't have the cash, so don't act like you do.
Right.
yeah, so can we, I'm sorry, Jen.
So, I'm one of the residents that was.
You gotta speak up if you wanna be heard.
Okay, so I'm one of the residents that brought this issue to Rick's attention. I'm sure there were others. The budget that was ended to Rick, the spreadsheet, to start creating the fiscal year 25-26 budget. The numbers on that spreadsheet do not align with the budget in the annual report for 24-25, the year that we're in right now. And so somebody changed them. And the question is, who? And the net effect of it was that the total expenses that were listed in the 24-25 budget that was handed to Rick were actually greater than what they in reality were. And the effect of that was that when the 25-26 budget was being put forward to the public from a standpoint of percent increase, the percent increase appeared to be smaller than what it really was because the 24-25 numbers had been inflated. And we tried to bring it out to the council's attention, but unfortunately, it was such a disaster at that point because it had all been dumped at the last minute in Rick's lap to finish up, that I don't think it was heard. So if you line the two up, if you go into the annual reports and you line up what was in the annual report, not the one that was issued in March of 25, but the one that was issued in March of 24, and you set that alongside of the one that was published in March of 25, you'll start to see where things went awry.
So let me just say, the problem is, that is a problem, but the problem that Chip's pointing to is the one that actually concerns me even more, which is that we actually have, in effect, 3 sets of books that don't match. We have what's been printed in our annual reports, we have what's in our spreadsheet that we've been using to do our budgeting, and we have what's in NEMRIC, which at least now is correct in terms of balance sheet information, right? Like 3 months ago, we couldn't even say that. So what I hear Chip pleading for is to wean ourselves from either the use of the spreadsheet or the practice of using a spreadsheet that is entirely untethered from NEMRIC, right? One or the other of those things has got to happen.
So in order to move forward, my big question mark then is, what numbers do we put into NEMRIC for, because it sounds like we haven't put anything in for, is what starts July 1st, is that?
Yeah, Chip, is that correct? There are no budget numbers in NEMRIC for the coming year, right?
There's not.
So is that technically 25?
25,
That's 26.
26. 25, 26 is called 26.
Okay, it starts 25, 26 so it's 26 starts the 25th or the 1st of July, 25.
Correct.
Okay, so the 26th. So we have nothing in there. So the question is, which numbers do we use? Do we use the spreadsheet or this?
do we use the book, the spreadsheet, or something else? If what Jennifer's saying is true, and I don't doubt it, if you're saying that what's in this book for 24, 25.
I feel we have to use the book.
So I could be wrong, but my sense is that with the exception of the fact that we somehow missed an entire page of the water sewer expense in the printing of the audit, in the printing of the book, those numbers for the coming year should match what's in the spreadsheet that we were using to create them. Because we basically did a PDF of that and transferred it over to Memphis Press. What's not correct is the calculations in the spreadsheet that we used to start from as last year's budget. You know, we were looking at what was the actual 2 years ago, what was the budget following that, what was the actual that year, and then what's the budget going to be for the coming year, right? And what I hear Jennifer saying, and I think I was finding some of this when I was actually doing it, is that the numbers that had been budgeted a year before were not the ones in the spreadsheet that we were starting from as we tried to create this budget. And the net effect of that is that, because what you end up trying to tell the voters is how much did this budget increase over last year's budget? What percentage? And so if you didn't use exactly the same numbers to start from, then that number is
It's awful.
cattywampus, to use the official term.
So it sounds like we should have put in the NEMRIC numbers from published budget, just going forward, and then we just continue to dig into them every month and
sort out whether or not those numbers are what we really want to be working with.
well, we're going to have to work with them because they're the documented numbers.
Yes, no choice.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and I mean, yes. I guess what I'm saying is, just because we budgeted a certain amount for a line,
Doesn't mean that we have to spend that much.
that's exactly right.
And that's our goal, is to find out as much stuff, dig into it. So the takeaways, and I think, guys, I'll admit I come across as knowing a lot, but I really don't. Or at least I like to position myself that way, that way. So I'll ask a million questions and whatnot. You've got balance sheet reconciliation review, budget status reports, balance sheet summary, transaction deficits, budget numbers, what expenses. I would say, Rick, can you give us really good, at the end of this, summarize what you're looking for, and let's act on those actions so we give you exactly what you want us to bring back to the council.
Yeah,
Because I feel like we're getting we could spin a million directions.
Yeah, so let's start with Chip's advice, which is that we should be taking last year's budget, the one we just passed for fiscal year 25-26, and putting them in NEMRIC. And Chip, I guess a question for you. I have an account with NEMRIC that I haven't even tried to open yet. Do you want other people flailing around in there, or do you want to do it yourself, or figure out how we can get Stacy or Robin to do it? Because those are our choices.
Well, who normally would enter the budget into the account?
Becky Therian, who hasn't been here in 13 months, 14,
And is no longer employed by
and is no longer employed. Maybe this is something where, 2 months from now, 3 months from now, we'd have the right person. But right now, we don't have that person. So one possibility is we empower somebody from this table who gets the right training, and with you looking over their shoulder, they do some of this grunt work. And I'm open to that. We have a user that we're not using for me.
So is it just
So
data entry?
they would log into the cloud, get into the general ledger and do budget maintenance, and at this point, it would be called next year's budget. July 1st, it will be called current year budget.
Correct.
That's kind
And
of,
they can have access to budget entry, doesn't give them any authority to do anything else.
Yeah, right. So we can limit so that they can't screw up anything.
So
Right.
it's just taking this and
we're just doing
Finding the line
sophisticated data
items.
entry.
That's exactly
I
right.
can pawn a college student on you
Yeah.
that
For the intro.
has computer engineering.
I'm not sure I want somebody who's not sitting around this table in it. I would rather have someone who I have a personal relationship with to actually go through and do this work.
Your wife won't do it.
Yeah.
But
Isn't there anything that you can just drag whatever you've got in whatever form that entered the budget?
I don't think number is that
I
specific.
don't know. Let's ask. Chip, is that possible?
You import it?
Control V, Control C.
Hold on.
If it's a straight spreadsheet and it has the account number and the budget in columns, then I can manipulate that and get it loaded.
Okay, I think that's what we have. The spreadsheet has account numbers if we unhide that column.
Well, I think though, that your spreadsheet is made up of multiple tabs. And so one's got to cut and paste into a singular tab, if you will, such that we have all the account numbers and we have the budget number. I don't care about last year's numbers, I don't care about
That's right.
actuals. Just what's the 26 budget that goes to that assigned account number. And if somebody wants to take your working spreadsheet and create a single spreadsheet, single tab that shows the account number and the budget number for 26, I can convert that. But the mess that you've got now, in which there's circular references, is every time I open it, it says, hey, you've got a number calling a number that's calling back to the number I'm talking about.
That started in the year 2012.
And so that is why a spreadsheet is not the best animal, because it's single cell entry. And a wrong formula into your summary page calculates a wrong total that may be used to make a decision.
Is that spreadsheet password protected, and do we track changes on it?
It is password protected, and the only versions that we give out are copies of the original.
But the order or the data entry that goes in on a daily basis, are those numbers tracked? Because how did they get so different? Well, it doesn't matter. It's done.
No, that's right. No, I mean, honestly, it's remarkable how well the actual functions in this thing work, because it's highly sophisticated and it includes many dozens of pages of tabs. And it's been going, and it just kind of gets more and more sophisticated every year in its effort to try and deal with the nuance. But as Chip says, I found it maddening because I couldn't tinker with someone and with something and really understand how it was getting changed. So, okay, what I'm hearing you say, Chip, is that really this is a data entry job. Somebody needs to take a hard copy and roll down through it and just enter all the numbers in the budget.
How many lines are we talking?
500 and something.
Yeah, something like 500.
Bucket will do it.
Yeah, you can do it? All right, so Hal will do it. So Chip, I'm thinking that we need to set you and Hal up for one conversation where he can use my username that we've already paid for, that I haven't opened yet, and get you guys to work together to make sure that he's doing it, that he understands the basics of how to do a data entry in Nemrick.
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay, Chip,
Can I offer a comment?
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I didn't mean to
Please,
ignore
sorry.
you. Please.
So, well, this is a question, I guess, for Chip. What I'm hearing is that the only numbers that you're going to be uploading into the NEMRIC system are the numbers for the 25-26 budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that removes the anomalies that appear in the 24-25 approved budget. If you guys are going to go beyond the 25-26, then what you have to do is you have to go back and correct your spreadsheet, because I don't think the integrity of the spreadsheet is there any longer because of whatever was changed. So you have to go back to the annual reports to get, so that would have been the annual report that would have been published in March of 2024 in order to get the 24-25 budget numbers with integrity.
I think these are two separate questions.
Okay, so I'm just saying, but that you were asking which one do you go to? You'd have to go to the annual report of 24-25 to find the numbers that have integrity, because when it got published in the annual report of March of 2025, it goes back in time, right? It's a sheet that goes back in time.
I think you're looking to
and
do
those
actual-
numbers for 24-25, there were anomalies. Some, they had been changed,
I
okay?
think you're going back to what I was talking about of looking at actuals to forecast or was in budget. And right now, we're just talking about putting in budget.
Okay, so as long as you're limiting it to 25-26.
That's right, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Those
There's a
numbers
separate
are okay.
So it would be these numbers here.
Correct.
Is
Right,
last
and
number.
that's fine. However, there is one small problem, and that is that on the, I don't even know what I've got now. I believe that this is the actual working document from the city website. So the working document from the city website, which I believe is the spreadsheet, it has a total to be raised for taxes of $5,290,268. What was published in the annual report for the 24-25 budget is that the total to be raised by taxes was $4,995,594. So we're up to two different numbers. And then what was put out as the warning for the vote of the taxpayers was $5,267,700.20, which is yet again a third number. So which one of the three is right? I don't have any clue, but there's three different numbers flying around.
So what we're gonna work with, let's just be clear. We're working from that document.
Yeah.
Those are the numbers that were published for the public to understand what they were voting on. So that's the numbers that we're going to put into NEMRIC. Then we're going to do a deeper dive into how we got to those numbers and whether or not they're what we actually want for our targets, because we may want to underspend in some and overspend in others. As long as we do that in a responsible way and we maintain our commitment to a zero balance budget at the end of the year, that's fine with me. And we can give an explanation for every change, for everything we're saying. So, and Chip's right. We budget once, and then we make changes from there. We don't keep making new budgets as the year unfolds.
But Rick, that in some ways, I would have to disagree with that, because what's in the annual report differs from what was put in front of the taxpayers for the warning and what they actually voted on. So those two numbers don't even jive. So
Jennifer, I guess what I'm going to say at this point is I can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
that's fine.
Right?
That's fine.
You got to pick one. They're only off by 25 grand, right?
Right.
So pick one. I don't care which one, honestly, because that 25 grand is not going to change anything in terms of what we said the voters. We told the voters we were going to charge them, right? It's not the issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the motion to vote on is an amount to be raised by taxes. It does not state total expenditures,
That's
does
right.
not state total other revenue. It just states an amount to be raised by taxes.
Yep.
So the budget doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It's meant for the city to try to see if they're as close as their best guess of what they thought they were going to be doing.
Which will help us the following year and the year after that if we do it right.
So, yeah.
Okay, so Hal and Chip and I on Monday will do a little email thread and find a time to get Hal set up in NEMRIC and a little instruction from Chip.
Hey, it's only the 4th of July. We got plenty of time. We've got a 3-day weekend to work on it.
Exactly. And I think we're all done today. We got to quit. So this is plenty to keep us busy.
Blow my fingers off.
If anybody wants to lie awake at night and think about the problems that we're dealing with and then call me and chat about it, Lori feels free to do it all the time. You should too.
4:30 in the morning.
I don't wait because I am the transaction action history, though. I'm fired up. about
Good.
that.
Actually, I would love it if you took responsibility for that. That would be great.
If you want to put your phone number out, this is so.
Yeah, I so don't.
Ain't gonna happen.
Call 1-800-PAM-LAD.
555-555.
Fireworks even legal in Vermont? I don't know. Are like real fireworks allowed in Vermont? Legal in Vermont?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the good stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
We have fireworks.
All right, we gotta go.
yeah.
Chip, thank you for a very long afternoon.
Hi, Chip,
Thank you, Chip.
Talk to you Monday.
Bye.
Okay, have a good weekend, everyone.
Is this meeting officially open?
It is.